I do want to address this, though, because I understand that this might grab people a certain way, especially if you're a big football fan, you're a fantasy player, and you're like, what are they talking about? Amari Cooper and a 2 and more? Like, what on earth? Why would someone value Brandon Aiyuk that way? Well, let me attempt to explain and use another voice so you don't think that Homer Willard is back from Hawaii again.
Homie.
Okay? Let me explain. This is about timing and circumstance. From the Cleveland Browns standpoint, they'd be turning one of their big-time receivers into a much younger player who they can have for a long period of time. Amari Cooper's contract is expiring at the end of this year. Okay? So that makes it flexible for the 49ers. But this is not equal to what would have happened before the draft when the Niners were shopping for a 1. The price has now gone up because they have a season to play. And it's a season where they are expected to win a Super Bowl. And they can't mess with that. So you've got to now compensate the 49ers. It's not just Brandon. How do we compensate Brandon? It's timing. It's circumstance. It's money. The length of time someone is going to be. They've got Brandon Aiyuk under control for 2 more years. They wouldn't have Amari Cooper for control for 2 more years. That needs to be compensated. Brandon is worth a first-round draft pick. That needs to be compensated. But there's not a draft next week. It's not a draft for many, many more months. So you have to wait till a whole nother season has gone by in order to get it. All of that needs to be compensated for the 49ers who don't need to do a damn thing. They can make Brandon play. They can make him go to his room if they want. And they should be credited for the fact that they're not. And if you don't want to hear that from me anymore, then listen to the person who's been covering the Cleveland Browns longer than anyone in the entire league. Her name is Mary Kay Cabot. She's been doing this since we were little kids, okay? Mary Kay came on with Bonte and Joe today, and she was asked, what would the cost be for the Browns if they were going to get in on the Brandon Aiyuk conversation?
Well, if Amari is going, then I don't see the Browns giving up their first-round pick. They're not going to want to do that. They haven't had a first-round pick in 3 years from the Deshaun Watson trade. So that one is probably staying here. Mm-hmm. I would say that the starting point then would be the second-round pick, and then maybe you would ask for a few other things for your former first-rounder, in addition to Amari. I would probably go with maybe a mid-round pick or 2.
Okay. Does that sound better coming from someone
Amari,
else?
A second round, and then like a 4th or 5th.
There you go.
A mid-round pick.
But all my point is it's an and. Amari and a 2, not enough.
Right.
You have to compensate the fact that it's August. So whatever the price was going that the Niners wanted in April, it's gone up.
Well, it's also because of what you talked about in terms of Amari Cooper's contract and Brandon Aiyuk. So you get Aiyuk and you're going to pay Aiyuk, and now you have him for 3, 4, 5 more years, whatever you decide contractually you're going to do. And the Niners get Amari Cooper, and he might be gone at the end of the year, and then you get a pick back. Probably not a first-round pick because Amari Cooper's really good, but you get a second and then a mid-round pick. And if you're the Niners and you do that right now, you would better have faith and confidence that your other receivers, Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, Trent Taylor, whoever else you have in the building, are going to be good enough this year, along with Amari Cooper, to still be a Super Bowl team.
If I were the Niners, I think I would play it exactly as you and I are sort of assessing the way that they're playing it. We might be wrong. We don't know exactly what's going on behind closed doors. Garofalo is very firm right now, and I respect him a lot. He is very firm that this situation is fluid. It's starting to move quickly, and he believes it's more likely than not that it's a trade, certainly when compared to an extension. And that makes all the sense in the world to me from the standpoint that I kind of arrived at the position that an extension for Brandon Aiyuk flat out doesn't make sense at all for the Niners, because they would pick Debo over Brandon. And an extension for Brandon probably means no Debo. And I don't think the Niners are ready to do that this year or next year for that matter. So when you look at it through that prism, I would do it exactly as I think they're doing it, because here's one thing that I believe that I know a lot of NFL teams don't. No matter what business I'm running, I want happy employees. I want them to want to be there. So I do think that the 49ers at a certain point go to Brandon and just be like, look, here are the options. Let's play multiple choice. Not on the list is you making $30 million.
Exactly.
Here. That's not on the list. Our multiple choice is $26 million a year here on a 4-year extension. Option B, $14.1 million here for 1 year, and we'll figure this out after the season is over. Option C is let's look for a trade.
And I would bet that they already had that conversation.
That's it. And if you pick, let's look for a trade, now there's an extension to C. If you look for a trade, you need to get what you want, and we need to get what we want.
And what you want may not be what you get, just so you know that. Because if you really want to go to Washington and they're offering just a first-round pick and a fifth-round pick and no player in the deal, well, that's going to be a no, because we're going to need some help right away. And it's Pittsburgh, it's Cleveland, it's New England, whatever other AFC destination. You haven't heard a lot of NFC chatter because they're not going to trade him in the NFC, I don't believe.
Well, they might trade him to Washington. They're not a
They're
threat.
not even in the NFC, whatever. Yeah, I mean, fine. You're in the NFC, sure. Yeah, thanks for participating. I mean, Carolina, they could trade him to Carolina as well, whatever.
Sure.
They're not a threat. But the point for me is, if you really want to trade and you've requested that, we got to make sure we get what we want. And you may not get what you want in terms of destination, because our number one goal, if we trade you, is getting what we want in return. Our second goal would be taking you and sending you somewhere where you're going to be happy.
I totally agree. Like, to me, it sort of works as a list, because we've been told that Brandon's agent has been told, feel free to shop around a little bit. So my bet would be it works like this. Agent comes back to the 49ers and says, I've got 3 teams. I've got 3 teams that are willing to pay Brandon what he wants. And the Niners will go, okay, are you willing to go to all 3? Yes, we're willing to go to all 3. Okay, fine. We will call those 3 and see what they would like to offer us. And we'll see if we can come to an agreement. If we don't, then sorry, you're out of luck. Or if we do come to an agreement before the trade goes down, we'll call you and go, okay, Brandon, we got a deal with the Patriots. We got a deal on the table for them. We'll take it. They're going to pay you what you want. Before we call the commissioner's office,
do you want to be a Patriot?
$14.1 million in Kyle Shanahan's offense, with people freaking out about Debo and Christian and George while you run your routes, or you can go to the freezing cold and play with Drake May and no other weapons. But you get paid. You make the call. And then he makes the call. To me, that's the order of business that's been going on.
Right.
At least as I see it in this moment.
Well, for me, it's an easy call that he'll make, and that will be, let me go be a Patriot and get paid. Because if he really wanted to be a 49er, then he would have gone back and taken whatever they offered, unless that offer is no longer on the table. Because it seems like back in February, after the Super Bowl, they were close, and he was getting his suit ready. These are his words.
Yeah,
I was getting my suit ready, and he felt like it was going to be a done deal, and then it wasn't, and then the market went bananas, and whatever happened from then to now, it seems like the two sides are far apart. And I think that he would have the ability to go back to them with his agent, Ryan Williams, and just say, hey, that offer that you had back in March, well, we will take it now after 5 months of reflection and me holding in and all the rest of it, unless that offer is no longer on the table.
Well, don't you think it comes down to 2 things for Brandon? I think the whole thing boils down to 2 desires, because I do think he firmly wants to be a 49er. He knows that this is a good offense. It's a good football team. You want to win. All of the things that the 49ers have to offer. Good weather, okay? All that stuff. Okay, 2 desires. Your desire to remain a 49er versus your desire to get paid at the top of the Brandon Aiyuk market. Which matters more to you? I really think that's all he's got to answer. Because he wants both, and you can't have both. He wants both. He wants $30 million from the 49ers, and you can't have that. So you have to, which desire drives you more? The 30 mil or the, is it 26, but I get to stay a 49er? Which is it?
Yeah, it just comes down to more than just the dollar amount. At times, it comes down to ego. And the ego of, where you see yourself in the league and where you wind up being paid in the league. And if you can't get beyond the ego part of it, where you think you're a top 5 guy and you deserve top 5 money, or you think you're top 3 and you need that top 3 money, for some players, you can't get beyond that. It's that sense of self. And if it's tied to how much you make, then you might be stuck because you're in a situation where your current team, they like you and you like them, but they don't have the ability cap-wise to pay you as much as you probably think that you're worth. And so then it comes down to, like you're saying, what's the most important thing? Is it that I get that that respect that I'm looking for? Or do I take less and stay in a situation that's really good for me and I could be successful in and all the rest of it? It comes down to individual priority.
This is going to sound, I don't want this to sound like Niner snooty. I don't want it to sound that way. And by the way, I don't hold it against Brandon if his answer is I want the money. I do not, in football especially, with what these guys do, the physicality involved, the taking your life into your own hands on every play. If you want every dollar, I totally get it, and I don't hold that against you at all. However, here's my prediction. If Brandon Aiyuk ends up following through with requesting a trade and he ends up getting traded, it is my belief that he will eventually regret it. That's my belief.
Who knows?
No, of course, who knows? Well, of course, who knows?
Right.
Any prediction is who knows. But I have a hard time believing, especially with the teams we're talking about, I have a hard time believing that this is going to look the way he thinks it's going to look, especially for wide receivers. I would argue it is rare. It's funny that Amari Cooper is a name that's coming up here because he is, I think, the exception. Amari Cooper is somebody who popped, quite frankly, on 3 different rosters. That's hard to do because you don't know who. Look at Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
Good Lord. He switched teams and he's like, stop, turn around, go back. I'm going to get killed. Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, Stephon Diggs is trying to be that same kind of guy. He's on his 3rd team now, right?
Right, but he played with a pretty elite quarterback in both of his first 2 stops and stands to again, provided that C.J. Stroud is everything we think that he is. So that's very lucky. But Brandon, the teams we're talking about right now, that's not what's going on.
And Tyreek Hill is another guy who's gone now to a 2nd team, and he's continuing to pop, but he's at a different level, and his quarterback is actually better than many people want to give him credit for, I think.
Agree. And gosh, the payment that they just gave him thinks that they agree too. I just mean there's so many examples of receivers in the NFL who are in positions like this where they pop in one place and then they're not going to get the money they want. They ask for a trade and you never hear from them again. You know what I mean? Like, this is not the perfect example, but I mean, some of those guys who were playing with Roethlisberger years ago, you know what I mean? Like Antonio Brown, not a great example because he just went crazy, but like that didn't go well. What about his teammate? Oh, Juju Smith-Schuster's a 1. He's not a 1. He was a 1 because he was playing next to Antonio Brown and nobody guarded him. And then Brown was gone. It didn't look as good. Then he goes to the Chiefs. They're just like kind of whatever. And the Chiefs are like, we don't need you anymore. So that could happen to Brandon Aiyuk. You go play with Deshaun Watson or Justin Fields or a year of Russ Wilson or God love you, Drake May or Jaden Daniels. If that ends up being what we're talking about, that would scare the hell out of me. Even for a few $1,000,000 extra per year, that would scare the hell out of me.
Depends on how much you get and how much you get guaranteed and all the rest of it. So you're Brandon Aiyuk, you're still young, and maybe you're thinking more about the money than you are thinking about the overall success of a team and, how great it is to be on a team this good and a coordinator this good and a quarterback who is this good and seems to be this good. Maybe those are things you go on to regret in exchange for $4 million a year and $10 million guaranteed, whatever that number is. Right now, maybe he's more smitten by the idea of how much he's going to get paid and what his average annual will be relative to the other guys at his position.
You might be right.
More so than being a part of a winning team.
Well, and I mean, we also, we have these conversations without knowing the truth of everything that we're being told. Like, we're running with this idea that the Niners offered him $26 million a year. Well, you notice every time somebody reports that, it's believed to be is the phrase that's in there. It's like, I don't know if they offered him that. I don't know if they offered him anything.
And what did we learn from the Klay Thompson saga? We learned that after the initial offer that happened 2 years and $48 million, that there was no subsequent offer.
Correct.
And Joe Lacob said it on the TK podcast, Tim Kawakami, basically that they had to wait and see. And so there was no second offer to Klay Thompson after the season ended. So we don't even know if this reported $26 million a year offer even happened. We do know that he has a fifth-year option for $14.1 million. We know that, and we also know that he's holding in. He's in camp, but he's not playing. Beyond that, everything is really conjecture.
Completely. I look at it and go, okay, what if the Niners, and even if it was $26 million, but it was months ago, if there's no offer on the table, if the Niners' stance is, you know what, extensions just aren't good for us right now, because there's too many big names on the roster, and we got to figure out what happens this year, and the Brock Purdy thing looms. So we're not going to be doing extensions. Christian and Trent, they need a year. They need a guarantee. They just need a little sweetener. We might do those, Brandon, but outside of that, we're not doing big long-term extensions right now because of Brock. And then there's other teams out there who are like, dude, we'll guarantee you $60 million and give you $30 a year. Then if I'm Brandon, I wouldn't regret it, even if the rest of my career sucks. Even if I never get 1,000 yards again.
Yeah, the money's so much of a difference.
It's like, dude, you got to go take care of yourself.
Exactly.
But if it was Niners are offering me 26, Patriots are offering me 29, oh, dude, give me the 26. Give me the 26. I'd like to have a good experience. I'd like to still be a good player.
That's you're putting yourself, Mark Willard, into that situation.
As stated, yes.
Of course. But to me, that becomes fascinating if the numbers are that relatively close, because a young player, Brandon Aiyuk, and a lot of this is wrapped up in ego. And I think sometimes about my situation, your situation, whatever, is there a number that I think I should make relative to what I do make? Of course, we all feel that way. But at what point do you realize that, you can put your ego aside? Your happiness is more important. You and I have talked a lot about this on and off the air, the amount of value in happiness and contentment and the security of free time and just being able to live your life without the burden of stress and ego. But this is now me in my mid-50s. In my mid-20s, like Brandon Aiyuk is, you're a lot more wrapped up in the ego stuff. Well, and your self-worth is, I think, wrapped up in different things.
For sure. And also, radio doesn't hurt. There's no chance that you and I don't want to say no chance. Remember when the window fell on Guru, but there's very little chance that when you and I come in here, we're going to end up in an ambulance.
I could stab you with this pencil.
You could.
I won't.
I think the chances are low.
Yeah.
I don't think you could catch me, and I'm not that fast. But anyway.
I'm pretty slow. Exactly.
That's the one thing where I'm always going to have a player's back. And no matter what happens with Brandon Aiyuk, I can sit here and promise you right now, unless he goes to a press conference in a new city and he goes, yeah, so it turns out the 49ers are a crap organization. And I can't even believe it went this way. If he does that, then maybe we'll have a different convo. I don't think he's going to do that. Short of that, I will always be a Brandon Aiyuk fan. I think he's I love his story. I love that he's someone who got challenged early by a coach and reacted the right way. I think he's a fantastic player, and I think he achieved a lot, especially early in the 49ers quarterback's career. That stuff will never go away, but I will not be mad at Brandon Aiyuk if he chooses the money, because football's too crazy, man. You cannot mess with it, and they know that. They know, even in practice, Teddy Bridgewater, man, you never know.
Sure.
That ball gets snapped, that could be it forever. And what's Brandon made in his career? 12?
Something like that.
Over the first
and
4
he's
years?
making 14 coming up this year.
I mean, if somebody wants to guarantee you $60 million, that's a wrap. That takes care of money for the rest of your life. Do not mess with that for a full season. So I get it. I think I would make that decision. But I understand what feels like the push-pull for Brandon right now. I want the money, but I don't want to leave. And he's being forced to pick one. And that sucks.
Well, he's not being forced to pick one.
No, he is, because the Niners won't give him what the going rate is.
Well, you can play and make 14.1 guaranteed on your fifth-year option.
But like if there is an avenue for you to take care of money for the rest of your life, that'd be stupid to play on the fifth-year option.
Well,
and
there is an avenue, I'm sure, for him to take a contract with the Niners that maybe isn't even $26 million a year.
Maybe. I mean,
what do they offer him back?